Good morning, everybody. Today I wanted to talk to you about stealing, thievery, pickpocketing. No, I'm just joking. I actually just found out here recently that my 4-year-old daughter stole something. She stole something that didn't belong to her, and I wanted to talk to you about how we handle the situation with discipline versus punishment. All right, so as I mentioned, my 4-year-old daughter came home with something from school that wasn't hers. So she stole something. So it's the first time she's ever taken anything that wasn't hers. And though we have definitely talked about stealing, she's asked multiple times, what does stealing mean? What is stealing? And I've always explained, if you take something that doesn't belong to you, or if you take money that doesn't belong to you, or if you go to the store and you take a piece of candy that doesn't belong to you, that's stealing. So we've talked a lot about what stealing means and what it looks like, but it's never, I think that there's a difference between talking about it, it's in theory or just talking about it versus in practice. So here's kind of what happened. We were at home and she went into her room and got some of her little miniature farm toy doll things, and she brought it back out to the kitchen table and she was building a farm. And she looks over and she says, "Mommy, look at the little girl. She's standing on her step." And I thought, okay, I look over and I see this little plastic square toy thing that I hadn't ever seen before. And I was like, where did you get that? Because I'm thinking maybe she took it out of something of her dad's, or I have no idea where it came from, because it wasn't actually fun or cool or cute or colorful. It was just this little gray square box thing. And she said, it's from school. And I immediately said, from school? What do you mean from school? And she said, well, it's from one of the activity centers. And I said, and did you bring it home? And she said, yeah. She said, I put it in my little pocket and I brought it home. And I thought, oh, so I said, you stole it? And her little face, she goes, yeah. It's like it just dawned on her. That's why I said I think that there's a difference between talking about stealing and then having it actually be in practice, because she knows what's stealing. If you ask her what's stealing, she would know. But I don't think that she actually connected the dots in her head that she was stealing something, because her face just kind of fell and she thought, oh. And so I told her, I said, honey, you can't take things that don't belong to you. I said, that belongs to the school. And she said, yeah. I said, so we're going to need to take that back to your teachers, and you're going to need to apologize for taking it because it's not yours. And so she said, okay, Mommy. And we just left it at that, because the one thing that I don't want to do is shame her, because I don't want her to feel bad. I don't want her to think, what's wrong with me? Because there's nothing wrong with her. She's 4. She doesn't know about this stuff yet. And not only that, shame doesn't work. When you shame your kids, it rarely works. In fact, I don't think it ever works. So anyway, I didn't want to shame her, even though the mommy part of me wanted to be like, why did you do that? You can't do that. So I just let it go. So we went into school the next day that she had class, and I pulled one of her teachers aside, and I explained to her what happened, and I had the little piece and I showed it to her, and she said, I'm not sure I even know what that is. I said, well, it's from an activity center. And she said, oh, okay, I know what it's for. And so I said, we've already talked, and she wants to clean up her mess. It's kind of the term we use. When you make a mess, you clean it up. And what does that look like? And so in this case, cleaning up her mess looks like taking the toy, the little tiny thing that she had, and giving it back to her teacher and apologizing for taking something that didn't belong to her. So I handed it to her, and after I had explained to her teacher what was going on, and I said, will you help us have a teachable moment? And her teacher was so sweet. She was like, yes, I would love to. So we went in and I handed her the little piece, and I said, okay, sweetie, you know what you need to do? I want you to clean up your mess. She immediately took the piece. She went over to her teacher, and she said, Miss R, I took this the other day, and I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have done that, and it's not mine, and I'm sorry. I won't do it again. And her teacher said, it's okay, sweetie. She said, thank you so much for bringing it back. I appreciate you being honest and bringing it back to us. She said, how about in the future, let's just leave the toys at school. Let's leave them at school, and you can play with them whenever you want. Okay? And my oldest was like, okay. And the teacher gave her a hug, and she went on her way. And I feel like it was handled, honestly, for me, it was handled perfectly, because she knew, after we explained to her, she realized what she had done was wrong. She was more than willing to clean up her mess in her own little 4-year-old way. She was repentant. I know she felt bad. So she was willing to clean up her mess. In fact, I didn't even actually really have to ask her to do it. So she cleaned up her mess. And then her teacher handled it beautifully. She forgave her, but she said, let's not do that again. And so the impression that's left in my little 4-year-old's mind is that she made a mistake, and she apologized, and we're going to move forward. Now, obviously, in the future, if it's something bigger, and if there's, different circumstances are going to call for different reactions and different types of discipline. Obviously, I'm not going to ground my 4-year-old for taking a little piece of thing from her school. So obviously, as she gets older, the situations will change. But I feel like for her age, it was handled perfectly. There's no shame. She probably won't do it again, at least for a little while, until she decides, maybe when she gets to be a little older and she decides she's going to be sneaky. But that's different. That's totally different than what we had happen here the other day. So anyway, I wanted to talk really quickly about the way we handled it. I will be completely honest, though. I did consult with my parents, because I thought, what am I going to do? This is a good moment, but how do I handle this? And so I'm grateful for the wisdom of parents and grandparents. And so this is definitely not all me. So I'm grateful for their wisdom. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys. And I appreciate you watching today. I hope you're having a good day. We would invite you to follow along with us, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got a bunch of videos about parenting and babies and stealing now. But thank you so much for watching. Click like if you like our videos. Leave us some comments. Do you have stories about how you handled your kids taking things? I would love for you to leave comments and kind of join in with us. We also have a Facebook page, and we have a blog. So we'll hope that you'll join us on one of those mediums. Take care, enjoy the rest of your day, and come again soon. Bye.